They said my face would be an eternal reminder of my shame. But today, when I look in the mirror, I see the reflection of Christ's grace. The scars I bear are no longer wounds. They are living witnesses to the love that redeemed me. Every morning, standing in front of the mirror in my small apartment in Madrid, I remember the day my uncle threw acid in my face. 5 years ago, I was only 17. He was the imam at our neighborhood mosque in Marrakesh, a man admired by all, feared by many, and my only crime was reading the gospel in secret in my room. Today, I am 22 years old, and I want to tell how God transformed what was supposed to be my destruction into the beginning of my new life. What man planned as punishment, the Lord used as a crown. My name is now there, the name I chose when I discovered true freedom in Jesus Christ. But I wasn't always Layla. Before, I was Aicha, a young Moroccan woman who lived within the warm, silent walls of an adobe house in the heart of the old Medina of Marrakesh. Our home was simple, with ochre-colored walls and blue windows. In the center was a courtyard, where a small fountain murmured all day long, and the sound of the water was the only thing that soothed my restless heart. The scent of orange trees mingled with the incense my mother burned during prayers. My father, Hassan, was a carpet merchant, a hard, serious man who measured the value of everything, including words. In our home, family honor was the strongest law. My mother, Fatima, moved like a shadow, silent, obedient, always with her eyes lowered. She sewed kaftans she would never wear and spoke little, as if silence were her protection. I was the eldest daughter, the one expected to set an example, uphold the family name, and obey without question. My younger brothers, Omar and Samir, still played ball in the narrow hallways, unaware of the weight tradition placed on our shoulders. But the real power in our family was not in my father's hands. It was in my uncle's. Yusuf, the imam of the Al-Noor Mosque. He didn't live with us, but his presence dominated every decision in the house. Tall, imposing, with a dark beard and a gaze that seemed to pierce one's soul, he was feared and revered by all. People greeted him on the streets, kissed his hand, and treated him as if he were a messenger of God's own will. To me, he was the man who defined right and wrong, and later, he would be the instrument of pain that would change the course of my life. But it is also through this pain that I met the one who gave me a new name, a new identity, and a new purpose. What began as a story of shame, the Lord transformed into redemption. Today, every scar on my face is a reminder that no suffering is in vain when Christ enters history. I grew up under the stern eye of my Uncle Yusuf. From a very young age, he watched everything about me, what I said, how I dressed, how I walked, even the way I breathed. He would say, in that deep voice that made me shiver inside, "You are the jewel of this family. Your purity is our honor." These words followed me like invisible currents. They were spoken as a compliment, but they weighed like a sentence. From an early age, I learned that the beauty God gave me was both a blessing and a curse. My long black hair flowed down my back like a cloak, and my green eyes, an inheritance from my Berber grandmother, drew attention wherever I went. I didn't understand why, but I sensed the discomfort this generated in the men's gazes and the harshness of the women's words. When I turned 15, suitors began to appear. Men who came to negotiate with my father, as if my life were a carpet to be sold at the market. I smiled on the outside, but inside I felt fear. They told me that one day I would be chosen by a godly husband, and that until then, I should guard my beauty with silence and modesty. "It is God's will," they repeated. But inside me, something screamed silently. My routine was always the same. I woke before the sun, the ground cold beneath my feet, and prepared for the first prayer of the day. I rolled out my rug toward Mecca and repeated, in perfect Arabic, the words I had memorized since childhood. My lips moved, but my heart didn't follow. I spoke to a distant God, a God I feared but didn't know. After a silent breakfast, where I served my father mint tea without looking him in the eye, I spent the day helping my mother with the chores. In the afternoons, I studied the Quran with other neighborhood girls. At night, I embroidered in the shade of the orange trees, listening to the women's whispered conversations. They spoke of violent husbands, of punishments for disobedience, of wives abandoned for smiling at the wrong time. Each story was a warning. A good woman is one who keeps quiet. These words sank into me. I obeyed them, but within the silence something grew that I couldn't name. A a restlessness that wouldn't go away, a thirst the well water couldn't quench. When everyone was asleep, I would sit by the window of my room and gaze at the stars above the Medina. The distant sound of the fountain in the courtyard kept me company, and there, I would whisper to the wind questions I could never say aloud. Is this all life has to offer me? Was I created only to obey and serve? The answers never came. Only the sound of the wind, the cold of the night, and the emptiness inside my chest. I continued to prostrate myself 5 times a day, saying the same words, repeating the same prayers. But at some point, I realized that my knees touched the ground, and my heart didn't touch the sky. The prayers that were supposed to bring me closer to God began to sound like lost echoes, words that rose but never returned. And it was in this silence between one prayer and the next that God began, unbeknownst to me, to prepare the way for the encounter that would change everything. When Ramadan arrived, it brought with it that old weight I knew so well, the weight of silence, discipline, and deprivation. The hours seemed to drag by in the scorching heat of Marrakesh, and fasting made the air inside the house almost suffocating. My family observed every rule with a devotion I had never questioned until then. But that year, something inside me began to see beyond appearances. For the first time, I noticed the cracks in the faith I'd always admired. My father, who preached honesty in business, would change the measurements of the rugs when he thought no one was watching. And my uncle Yusuf, the one who preached humility in prayer, would walk the streets expecting to be revered as a saint. What disturbed me most, however, was the way he treated women, always with disdain, as if they were inferior creatures, destined only to serve and obey. In my own home, I saw this same pattern reflected. My mother would fall silent at my father's voice, her dreams swallowed by a choiceless obedience. At family gatherings, the men would sit in the main room, surrounded by laughter and lively conversation, while the women ate in the kitchen, invisible, silent, hurriedly eating whatever was left. I remember one night in particular. I was helping prepare dinner when I heard my Aunt Khadija crying softly in the backyard. Her husband had beaten her again, this time because the food was too salty. Neither woman reacted with indignation. They just leaned in close, whispering comforting words, while my mother said in a weary voice, "It's his right. We need to be better wives." Those words struck me like a blade. For the first time I felt revolt. Something inside me refused to accept that God, the creator of all, could approve such injustice. It was then that the first doubts began to emerge. Not long afterward, on a spring morning when almond blossoms painted the courtyards white, my father entered the house with a rare sparkle in his eyes. Behind him came my uncle Yusuf, with the same air of authority as always. I was serving tea when my father announced proudly, "Aicha, we have found a suitable husband for you." His name was Abdul Rahman Al-Fasi, a 43-year-old widower, father of 3, and owner of several properties, a man of respect in religious circles. My heart sank. I was only 17. I looked at the floor, as I had been taught, and tried to control the trembling in my hands. "It is an honor for our family," my uncle said, in that voice that brooked no question. "You will be a godly wife and bear him many children." That night, I cried silently until my pillow was soaked. Through the window, I could see the distant lights of modern Marrakesh, a city that seemed like another world. There, I knew there were women who studied, worked, chose their husbands, lived their own stories. Why couldn't I have the same right? The injustice burned inside me like fire, slowly dissolving the blind obedience I'd always held. It was then that the unexpected happened. God began to act, discreetly, like someone sowing light in the middle of the night. One day, in my father's carpet workshop, Miriam, a French tourist with golden hair and blue eyes, unlike so many foreigners passing through the souk, she spoke fluent Arabic and, more than that, demonstrated a genuine respect for our culture. There was something different about her, a serenity I couldn't explain. During one of her visits, while my father was serving other customers, Miriam noticed the sadness in my eyes. She approached me and asked softly, in sweet, soft Arabic, "Are you okay, little one?" That simple gesture, that tone of voice, touched something inside me. There was compassion in her eyes, a tenderness I'd never seen in an adult, much less a free woman. Without knowing why, I wanted to hear more of that voice, and it was through her that the name of Jesus would enter, for the first time, into my life. I can't explain what happened that day, but suddenly, The words began to tumble out of my mouth as if they had a life of their own. Without thinking, I told Miriam everything I'd been keeping silent for years. I talked about the arranged marriage, about the dreams being ripped from me, about the weight of living in a gilded cage where even the air seemed to be monitored. She didn't interrupt me. She just listened. Really. Every now and then she nodded, and her eyes, oh, her eyes, they held a tenderness I'd never seen in anyone. When I finished, embarrassed at having said so much, she gently took my hands and whispered, "God loves you, Aisha. He loves you exactly as you are, with your doubts, your dreams, your restless heart. He didn't create you to live as a prisoner." Those words echoed inside me for days. Does God love me, just as I am? It was something so new, so contrary to everything I'd heard since childhood, that it seemed impossible. Until then, God had always been a distant judge, someone I feared displeasing. But for the first time, I heard of a God who saw beauty in questions, not sin. That sentence from Miriam was like a seed planted in the desert, and even though my heart was dry, God made life spring up there. Her words lit a flame I couldn't extinguish. At night, lying in silence, I repeated them in my mind like someone savoring a hope they don't yet understand. God loves you just the way you are. 2 weeks later, Miriam returned to the workshop. My father was negotiating with an American client when she approached and placed a small blue package between my trembling hands. "This will help you find the answers you seek," she whispered, "but be very careful. Read it only when you are alone." That night, I waited until the whole house fell asleep. The walls breathed silence, and even the sound of the courtyard fountain seemed to have stopped. With sweaty hands, I unwrapped the package. Inside was a small book with yellowed pages. At the top, in Arabic, was written, Al-Injil, the Gospel. My heart raced. I knew what it meant to be caught with that book, but there was something stronger than fear, a thirst that no amount of repeated prayer had been able to quench. I opened it to the first page and read, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." The words seemed to dance before my eyes. There was a gentleness to them that the Quran had never conveyed to me. It was as if I heard for the first time the voice of God himself speaking to me, not to command me, but to love me. Night after night, I became a time thief. I waited until I heard my father's snoring, my mother's weary sigh, the heavy silence of the sleeping house. Then, I lit a small candle hidden behind my school books and dove into those forbidden pages. About him, Jesus healing the sick, not by merit, but by compassion. I read about the way he looked at women, not with disapproval, but with dignity. I read about forgiveness, the grace, the love that precedes obedience. And for the first time, I felt something I had never felt in the prayers of my childhood. Peace. It was as if the light from that candle came not from the flame, but from the words. And in the silence of the early morning, I began to understand. The God Miriam had introduced me to was not distant. He was there, very close, calling me by name. Each page of that little book was like a sip of fresh water after years of thirst. I read and felt something inside me awaken, something I hadn't even known was starving. It was as if each word touched a forgotten place in my soul. I remember the night my tears began to fall onto the pages. I had just read Jesus' words, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." It was as if God himself had called me by name. All my life, I had carried the weight of perfection, the burden of rules, the fear of failure, the constant guilt. And suddenly, someone was offering merest not a list of duties, not a punishment, just rest. For the first time, I felt like I could simply be, without fear, without masks, without having to prove anything to anyone. But that's when I came to that verse. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that something in me broke completely. A God who from thee, and not just demands. A God whole of first, before being loved. A God who is delivered, instead of punishing. Those words disarmed me. I didn't know love like that could exist. One morning, while reading about the crucifixion, something extraordinary happened. The words on the page began to move inside me, and suddenly, I was no longer in my room. I saw myself at the foot of a cross, and before me stood a man covered in wounds, but with eyes so full of love that time seemed to stand still. I didn't feel afraid. I didn't feel guilty. I felt peace, a peace that no memorized prayer had ever given me. Then I heard a voice soft, like the wind passing through the palm trees, but powerful like thunder that shakes the soul. "Aisha, I've been waiting for you." My heart raced. I whispered into the silence, "Who are you?" And before I even finished asking the question, I already knew the answer. "I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the one who has been knocking on the door of your heart all these nights." His eyes, so full of tenderness and fire, met mine. "Fear not, your search is over. I have found you, just as you have found me." I woke up with tears streaming down my face, but for the first time, they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of joy. I knew, with a certainty that didn't come from reason, that I had found what my soul had always been searching for. Jesus wasn't just a distant prophet mentioned in the texts. He was the Son of God, God himself who had come to get me. The following days were a whirlwind. On the outside, I lived the same routine: prayers, chores, wedding preparations. But on the inside, a quiet revolution had begun. Each verse of the gospel broke down years of fear and oppression. Each word of Jesus erased the image of an angry and unreachable God and replaced it with a Father who loved me tenderly. I began to pray differently. I didn't repeat formulas. I didn't kneel out of obligation. I spoke to Jesus with simplicity, like someone talking to a friend who understands even silence. I told him my fears, my doubts, my pain at seeing the women in my family trapped in invisible chains. I asked for strength, not to escape, but to remain faithful to what I now knew to be the truth. But I also knew I was treading on dangerous ground. Every night I opened that hidden gospel was a risk. Every page turned could cost me my life. And still, I couldn't stop, because for the first time, I was viva. Every prayer I offered to Jesus was an act of silent rebellion, a risk that could cost me everything. In my community, abandoning traditional faith was more than disobedience. It was a death sentence. I grew up hearing stories of young people who disappeared for asking too many questions, of families who lost their honor because someone dared to follow a different path. And yet, I couldn't stop. The truth I had found in that forbidden book was too powerful to be forgotten, too beautiful to be denied, too real to be hidden forever. Jesus had become my secret refuge, the place where I could breathe without fear. He was my hiding place, the reason I woke up every morning and endured the repeated prayers and cold stares. But my secret would not remain hidden for long. The betrayal came from the most innocent place, from the curious eyes of my younger brother Omar. It was a Friday morning, the quietest of the week. The world was asleep. Even the alley cats had fallen silent. I was in my corner, the candle flickering and casting shadows on the walls, reading Jesus' parables for the 1,000th time, when I heard light footsteps in the hallway. My heart stopped. I blew out the candle and hid the gospel under the mattress. I snuggled under the covers, trying to appear asleep. The footsteps stopped in front of the door. For a moment, there was absolute silence. Then, a soft little voice. "Aisha?" I opened my eyes. Through the crack in the door, I saw Omar's silhouette. "Why is there a light?" I heard voices. My heart raced. I searched for a quick excuse. I was praying, little one. Sometimes I speak to Allah out loud." He entered the room, curious, with that innocent look of someone who doesn't understand the weight of what he's seeing. "And the book you hid?" "I saw it." I swallowed hard. "It's just my personal Quran," I lied, feeling the bitter taste of guilt. "Now go back to bed. It's late." He looked at me for a moment longer, as if trying to believe me, and then he left. But something in my tone, perhaps the tremor in my voice, ignited a dangerous curiosity in him. In the days that followed, I noticed his eyes following me silently. During family prayers, he would watch me closely, trying to spot any differences. Sometimes I would wake in the night and see him standing in the hallway, listening to my whispered prayers to Jesus. The final blow came a week later. That night, I read until late, immersed in the words of love and forgiveness, until sleep overcame me. The gospel was still under my pillow. Omar came into my room early one morning to wake me for dawn prayer, something he always did sweetly. But this time, as he shook me, he dislodged the pillow, and the book fell to the floor. The sound of the impact was like thunder in the silence of the house. Omar looked at the floor, confused. He bent down, picked up the book, and read the gold letters on the cover, Al-Injil, and his expression changed. His eyes, so pure, filled with fear and surprise. "Aisha," he whispered, his voice trembling. "What is this? Why do you have the Christian's book?" I tried to take it back, but he recoiled, clutching the book to his chest. "Omar, Please, listen to me. I can explain." But it was too late. At that moment, I saw in his eyes the conflict between his sisterly love and the duty he believed he had to his faith and family, and I realized, with a tightness in my chest, that this innocence had just collided with my truth. He was still just a child, but in his world, things were simple. Right was right, wrong was wrong, and owning a Christian book, to him, was the worst of sins. "I'll tell Uncle Yusuf," Omar said, with the seriousness of someone who believes he's protecting the truth. "He'll know what to do." I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. "No, Omar. Wait, please listen to me," I shouted, forgetting to control my tone of voice. But it was too late. He ran out the door, the gospel clutched to his chest as if it were irrefutable proof of his guilt. The house fell silent, and the silence was deafening. I sat on the floor, limp, shaking, not from the cold, but from sheer terror. I knew what was coming. Omar would run to the mosque, tell my uncle everything, and he would return to seek justice. Each passing second felt like an eternity, and the distant sound of footsteps in the hallway made me shiver. When the bedroom door finally opened, it was as if a storm had passed through the walls. My Uncle Yusuf appeared there, tall, imposing, the gospel in his right hand like a weapon. His eyes burned with a fury that seemed to come from another world. "Blasphemy!" he cried, his voice echoing throughout the house. "You betrayed your faith, your family, and God himself." I sank against the wall, trying to disappear, but he approached with firm steps, his face contorted with anger. "How long, Aisha?" he cried, raising the book before me. "How long have you been feeding your soul with this Christian poison?" I tried to speak, but my voice barely came out. "Uncle, I can explain." "Silence!" he roared, the sound of the word cutting through the air like a blade. "There is no possible explanation for someone who abandons the faith of their ancestors." His hand came down fast and heavy, slamming into my face with such force that a burst of light danced before my eyes. The taste of blood filled my mouth. My father appeared in the doorway, his face pale and confused. My mother followed close behind, covering her mouth with her hands. "What's going on?" my father asked, his voice trembling, although his fear already betrayed that he knew the answer. "Your daughter," my uncle replied, spitting the words like venom, "has been praying to the false god of the Christians. She has become an infidel in her own home." The word infidel echoed through the courtyard like a sentence. I saw the color drain from my father's face. My mother began to cry softly, her tears falling onto the cold stone floor. The rest was like a nightmare. My uncle ordered me to kneel in the center of the courtyard. Soon the entire family was gathered. My brothers, my aunts, my cousins, all watching as if witnessing a silent execution. "This is what happens when a woman has too much freedom," my uncle said, circling me like a judge about to pronounce sentence. "When we allow foreign and corrupt ideas into our homes." His eyes shone with a religious fury that chilled me to the core. I was no longer his niece. I was an example to be punished. It was 3 hours that seemed like an eternity. He sat me down in the center of the courtyard, and the interrogation began like a relentless fire. He wanted to know every detail. What I'd read, if I'd spoken to Christians, if I'd renounced my family's faith. Every question was fraught with traps, every answer with danger. I knew any wrong word could be used against me. When I finally found the courage to say what was hidden deep in my soul, that I believed in Jesus as the Son of God, the silence that fell was more frightening than all the previous screams. My uncle's gaze became an abyss. For a moment, I thought he was going to kill me right then and there. "You have a choice," he said, with a calm that hurt more than his anger. "You can publicly repent, burn this book, and return to the path of righteousness, or you can accept the fate you have chosen for yourself." I looked around. I saw my mother with her face streaked with tears, my father with his head bowed, unable to look at me. I felt my entire body tremble. Part of me wanted to scream that I regretted it, that it had all been a mistake. But inside me, a soft, steady voice whispered what I needed to remember. "Whoever denies me before men, I will also deny him before my Father who is in heaven." I took a deep breath. I cannot deny what I know to be true. Jesus is my Savior. The world seemed to stop. No one moved. Even the desert wind was still for a moment. Then, with a slight nod, my uncle replied, "Very well, so you have chosen your punishment." The following days were a limbo. He gave me a week to reflect before deciding what to do with me. In practice, it was a waiting sentence. I was locked in my room, the same room where I had once read the gospel in secret. Now that space had become my prison. My mother brought me food once a day, She came in silently, her eyes puffy from crying. "Please, daughter," he whispered, setting the plate beside the bed. "Think carefully. Your uncle can be cruel. There's still time to turn back." But I couldn't. Something in me had already been changed forever. My brothers were forbidden to speak to me. Poor Omar couldn't look at me without bursting into tears. Samir, the youngest, watched from the hallway with confused eyes, unable to understand why his storytelling sister was now being treated like a criminal. That hurt more than any threat. During the long days of silence, my faith didn't crumble. On the contrary, it took on deeper roots. I prayed constantly, not with memorized phrases, but with words that welled up from my soul. I spoke to Jesus as one would speak to a close friend. I asked for strength, forgiveness, and, above all, that he protect my family from the pain my choice was bringing. On the 6th day, my uncle came to see me. He entered the room slowly, sat on the edge of the bed, and for a moment his face looked tired, almost human. "Aisha," he began, his voice calmer than I expected, "I have been praying for you. I have asked Allah to show you the error of your ways." There was something in his eyes, not just anger, but a kind of suppressed sadness, as if he regretted what he was about to do. That night, his words echoed inside me like a sentence. "Tomorrow, after the dawn prayer, I will give you one last chance. Repent publicly in the mosque, or face the consequences." I had the courage to ask, even though I knew what he would answer. "What if I don't regret it?" He stared at me with stone-cold eyes. "Then the punishment will be severe. May your life serve as an example to others who dare to stray from the path." When he left, silence filled the room. I knew that what awaited me the next day wouldn't just be humiliation. It would be the end of my old life. I leaned my forehead against the window and stared at the stars over Marrakesh, etching each one into my memory, like someone trying to capture the last glimpse of beauty before the darkness. I prayed until my voice gave out. I asked for strength. I asked for courage. I asked for Jesus to stay with me, no matter what. And when silence finally enveloped me, I felt his presence, serene, constant, alive. Dawn came too soon. I heard my uncle's footsteps on the stairs even before the call to prayer. He entered without knocking, and the air filled with a strong chemical smell that made me flinch. A shiver ran down my spine. "It's time," he simply said. I rose slowly and put on the blue caftan my mother had sewn for festive occasions. If this was to be the last day of my old life, I would face it with dignity. I descended the stairs in silence, watching the dark glass vial he held in his left hand. The liquid inside shifted with each step, reflecting the morning light. In the courtyard, the whole family awaited me, and not just them. There were neighbors, friends from the mosque, familiar faces from the Medina, a silent courtroom, full of eyes watching me with fear, pity, or contempt. My uncle stood in front of me and raised his voice. "Aisha, this is your last chance. Repent of your blasphemy, renounce the false Christian God, and return to the bosom of true faith." The silence that followed was thick as stone. I saw my mother with trembling hands, tears streaming down her face. My father could barely look at me. My brothers watched with the innocent terror of those who still don't understand the cruelty of adults. And it was at that moment that I felt something supernatural. The voice of Jesus sounded within me, calm, firm, more real than the very ground beneath my feet. "Do not fear those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul." I lifted my chin, and without hesitation, answered with everything I had left in me. "Jesus is my Lord and Savior. I will not deny him." It all happened in the blink of an eye. I saw the fury flare in my uncle's eyes like fire. He opened the small bottle, and the acrid smell filled the air, burning my nose. "Your face will show your shame," he shouted. And then came the horror. The liquid hit my face, and the pain was instantaneous, brutal, inhuman. It was as if fire itself had been poured upon me. I screamed, a scream that seemed to come from the depths of my soul, somewhere between despair and a cry for mercy. I tried to shield my face with my hands, but the touch only spread the pain. My skin burned, dissolved, and the smell of raw flesh filled the air. The crowd screamed. My mother collapsed to the ground, and the world spun around me. But even amidst the flames of grief, something inside me remained standing. A gentle presence, a certainty that no pain could erase. I was not alone. The smell of burning flesh filled the air, mingling with the scent of the orange trees in the courtyard, a blend impossible to forget, the kind of memory that imprints itself not just on the mind, but on the soul. Someone shouted for water, but my uncle raised his arm in an authoritative gesture. "Leave her alone! Let her feel the weight of her sin!" But the chaos had already begun. My mother broke through the crowd, her eyes wide with despair, and ran to me with a bucket of water drawn from the well. She threw it over my burning face, and for a second relief came, cold, almost pitiful. But then the pain returned with double the force. I felt my skin peel, swelling engulf my face, my vision fade on one side. People around me screamed, some in horror, others in prayer, as our courtyard became a field of panic. A neighbor, who had known me since I was a child, took off her own cloak and wrapped it around me. "Come on, my daughter, hold on tight." I heard someone shout, "Call an ambulance, quick!" Amidst the shouts and running, I caught a glimpse of my uncle standing in the center of the courtyard, the empty bottle still dangling from his hand. He watched everything with a cold, almost satisfied expression, and through my pain, I thought nothing could be more cruel than that look. "This is what happens," I heard his voice echo, "when you betray the faith of your ancestors." After that, everything became a blur. Sirens mingled with screams, the world spun, and someone lifted me onto a stretcher. I remember the metallic screech of the ambulance door closing, and the sound of tires tearing up the street. Through the crack between the makeshift bandages, I saw my mother's face running behind the vehicle, arms outstretched, screaming for me, a sound quickly drowned out by the roar of traffic. In the hospital, time lost its meaning. The doctors moved quickly, exchanging words I could barely understand. The diagnosis came later: 2nd and 3rd degree burns. The right side of my face, from my hairline to my chin, had been devastated. My right eye, miraculously, had been spared, though my vision would never be the same again. The scars, they carefully said, would be permanent. But at that moment, something bigger was happening inside me, because at the height of the pain, between the sound of my own scream and the smell of acid, I felt something that no pain could erase. A presence, smooth, alive, real. It was Jesus. He was there, with me, in the midst of the flames and agony, holding my invisible hand. I felt his voice within my heart, calm as a river. "This is not the end, my daughter. It is the beginning." These words became my anchor. Even when the pain seemed unbearable, even when the bandages were changed and I screamed helplessly, there was an inexplicable peace sustaining me. I knew I was alive for a purpose, and that nothing, not hate, not fire, not acid, could extinguish what God had birthed within me. My mother came to visit me every day. She sat beside my bed, her hands trembling, her gaze lost between guilt and pain. Sometimes she reached out to touch me, but stopped halfway, as if afraid of hurting me further. No words were necessary. The silence between us said it all, and even amidst the tears and the suffering, something began to change. Within her, within me, within that story that the world tried to end with fire, but that God was just beginning to write. My father stood by the window, motionless, his face heavy with shame and confusion. He couldn't look at me. It seemed to him that I was a living reminder of something he longed to forget. My mother, on the rare occasions when she summoned the courage to visit me, could barely hold back her tears. She would sit beside me, clutch the blanket tightly and whisper, "Why, Aicha? Why couldn't you keep your doubts to yourself? Why did you have to defy everyone and everything?" I didn't know what to say. How could I explain that? After learning the truth, silence became impossible. My brothers came only once. Little Omar burst into tears as soon as he saw me. The bandages wrapped around my face, a cruel reminder of what his innocence had wrought. Samir, clutching my mother's hand, looked at me fearfully, as if I were a ghost. After that visit, they never returned. My uncle Yusuf didn't show up either. I learned from my father that he claimed to have fulfilled his religious duty, and that any further suffering was simply Allah's will. "He says you are an example," my father murmured, his voice breaking, "a living lesson to anyone who dares betray the faith." On the 3rd night in the hospital, something extraordinary happened. The pain had been almost unbearable that day. The infections worsened, and the doctors had to clean the wounds. The process was so long and brutal that it left me exhausted, drained of strength and hope. Even with heavy doses of morphine, my face throbbed as if each heartbeat were a reminder of the pain. I fell asleep late, amidst exhaustion and tears. But what came next wasn't a dream. It was something so vivid, so real, that to this day I can't describe it without getting emotional. I was in a garden, but not like the gardens of Marrakesh. This one was different. The flowers had colors I'd never seen before, colors that seemed to sing. The air had a sweet, pure scent that filled my lungs with peace. A river of clear water ran between the trees, and the sound of the water was like music, like a song of rest. And then I saw him. Jesus was walking toward me. I recognized him even before I saw his face. It was him, the same one who had called me in the early hours of the morning, the same one who had sustained me through my pain. His gaze held such profound tenderness that I felt my knees weaken. When he smiled, it was as if sunlight had dawned within me. Layla, he called me, a name I had never heard before, but it rang like an ancient truth, as if it had always been mine. My brave daughter. I approached him and realized something. I no longer felt pain. I brought my hands to my face and found smooth skin, without wounds, without scars. Sir, what happened? Did I die? I asked, confused. He laughed softly. It was a light sound, like water falling over stones. No, my beloved, not yet. There is much to do, but I wanted to show you how loved you are, and to heal you in a way no doctor can. Jesus reached out and touched the side of my face where the acid had burned. The instant his fingers touched me, a gentle warmth coursed through me, starting in my face and spreading to my heart. It was as if every piece of my broken soul was being restored, stitched back together with love. These scars, he said tenderly, are not marks of shame. They are signs of courage. They tell a story the world needs to hear. It was then that I cried. I cried out everything I had bottled up inside. The fear, the loss, the pain, the longing for my family. And Jesus simply held me, letting me cry until peace returned to fill the space that pain had occupied for so long. But Lord, I whispered between sobs, I lost everything. I lost my family. He looked me in the eyes and answered in a firm voice, full of love. You didn't lose. You just started over. What I have for you is greater than what was taken away. My uncle told me I was a disgrace, that I deserved every wound. His words echoed like arrows in my heart, until, suddenly, I felt something different. It was like being enveloped by an invisible presence, a warmth that surpassed all pain. Jesus took me in his arms, and in that moment, it was as if love itself had embraced me. Do not be afraid, he whispered in my ear. You are still mine. His words engraved themselves on me like eternal promises. What your uncle intended for evil, I will turn for good. Your scars will tell the story of my redemptive power. Then he showed me something that took my breath away. In his hands, glowing softly, I saw the nail marks. On his forehead, the scars left by thorns. In his side, the spear wound. He looked at me tenderly and said, I also carry scars, Layla. Scars of love. They are what bought your freedom. Yours bind you to me. They are the seal of my presence in you. I felt tears stream down my face as I asked, my voice trembling, What should I do now, Lord? I don't know where to begin. He smiled patiently. Now you heal. Allow your body and soul to find rest. And when you are ready, tell what I have done. There are many young women like you, trapped in systems that oppress them, searching for the truth without knowing where to find it. Your testimony will be a light to them. I lowered my head, feeling small in the face of such a mission. But my family rejected me. I have nowhere to go. He touched my face, with the same hand that bore the marks of the nails. I prepare the way. You will find people who will love and help you. I will give you a new home, a new beginning. Trust me, Layla. I will never abandon you. The garden around us began to slowly disappear, as if the wind were carrying it away. Before it all vanished, Jesus touched my forehead and said, Remember this when you wake up. Your pain has a purpose. Your tears are precious to me, and your future is full of hope. I woke up with tears streaming down my face, but for the first time since the attack, they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of joy. The experience had been so real that I could still smell the flowers in that heavenly garden. My body still ached. The bandages still covered my face, but something inside me had changed. Shortly after, a nurse entered the room. Are you feeling better today? She asked in Arabic, surprised to see me smile. Yes, I said, and realized it was true. I felt better, much better. In the following days, changes began to happen. A social worker showed up at the hospital to talk to me about the possibilities of asylum and protection. International groups had heard about my case and were offering help. But the visit that truly changed everything was from a woman named Amina, a Moroccan woman with a gentle gaze and a firm voice. She was part of a small underground Christian network that supported persecuted converts. "You're not alone, sister," she said, holding my hand tenderly. "There are others like you. We care for each other. When you leave here, we'll have a safe place to welcome you." As she spoke, I felt my heart fill with something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Jesus had fulfilled his promise. He had truly prepared the way. His words in the garden echoed within me, soft and powerful. "Fear not, you are still mine." The following weeks in the hospital became a journey between pain and rebirth. I didn't know what awaited me beyond, but for the first time, I was ready to move on. Not as the shame-scarred Aisha, but as Layla, the daughter Christ himself called by name. As my face slowly healed under the attentive care of burn doctors, my heart found strength in every silent prayer and every page of the Arabic Bible Amina secretly brought. The faith I had embraced in my heart now became my shield against pain and fear. After 3 weeks, the doctors finally allowed me to look at my reflection. The mirror showed a face I recognized, but one that had been irreversibly transformed. The right side was marred by pink scars that stretched like a map of my suffering. My right eye drooped slightly, and the tight skin limited some expression. Tears came naturally. It was impossible not to cry in the face of such a radical change. The hospital psychologist tenderly reminded me that anyone would feel the same. But then my mind went back to the words of Jesus that I had heard in my dream. These are not marks of shame. They are marks of courage. Little by little, I began to see my face not as a deformity, but as a living testimony of my faith, my resilience, and my trust in God. While I was finding inner strength, the external reality became increasingly dangerous. Amina told me that my uncle Yusuf was using my case as an example in his mosque, warning about the dangers of apostasy. There were rumors that upon release from the hospital, I could face even harsher punishments. "You can't go home," Amina said during one of the nighttime visits, her voice low and firm. "We've received information that people are planning to hurt you even more. Your uncle doesn't think the punishment was enough." The weight of those words crushed me. Not only had I lost my family, but the place I had always called home, with its Atlas Mountains, its colorful markets, and its golden sunsets over the Medina, was no longer safe for me. "What options do I have?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Amina approached, carefully holding my hand. "There are international organizations that help people in your situation. Refugees from religious persecution. There are asylum programs in Spain where you could live your faith without fear." Spain, so close geographically, yet so far from everything I knew. A place where my life could begin again, but where I would be completely alone. "How would that work?" I asked, my heart sinking. "We would have to remove her from the hospital discreetly," Amina explained. "There is a network of Moroccan Christians and international organizations that can help. First, you would go to Tangier, then by ferry to Algeciras. In Spain, you could apply for asylum." The enormity of what I was about to do crushed me. Leaving behind my family, my home, my culture, my language, and facing an unfamiliar world with a face that would tell my story before I could even speak. That night, I knelt by my bed and prayed like never before. My tears weren't just tears of pain, but tears of complete surrender, asking God for courage, protection, and guidance. For the first time, I felt He was making a way, even when everything around me seemed to be falling apart. "Jesus," I whispered in the darkness of my hospital room, "is this what you want for me? Should I leave everything behind and trust you for a future I can barely see?" The answer came not in audible words, but as a deep peace that settled in my heart. I remembered the words of the gospel, "Let the dead bury their dead. You come, follow me." Then I understood that following Jesus sometimes requires sacrifices that seem impossible to bear. 3 days later, I made my decision. "I will do this," I told Amina firmly, despite the tremor in my voice. "I will go to Spain." Preparations began immediately. First, I needed documents. My passport was at home, in my parents' hands, inaccessible. But Amina had contacts who could arrange emergency documentation for refugees. I also needed clothes. Everything I owned was stored in my childhood bedroom, now out of reach. On the night of my escape, my heart was beating so fast it felt like the hospital security guards could hear it. Amina arrived around 2 a.m., disguised as a night shift nurse. She brought a large blanket that would completely cover me, hiding my bandages and scars, and simple clothing that would allow me to go unnoticed. "Are you ready?" she whispered, helping me sit on the edge of the bed. I looked around the room that had been my home for almost a month. The dried flowers my mother had left on the nightstand, next to the letters from my brothers that I'd never had the courage to open, seemed to be silently saying goodbye to me. I was leaving behind the last vestiges of my old life. "I'm ready," I murmured, though my voice was shaking. We left the hospital like shadows in the night. A car was waiting for us on a side street. It was driven by an older man, introduced only as Ahmed, a brother in Christ. During the 3-hour drive to Tangier, we didn't exchange words. Each of us was lost in silent thought, as the lights of Marrakech slowly disappeared behind us. At dawn, the ferry to Spain awaited us. Ahmed had arranged my passage and temporary documents identifying me as a religious refugee seeking asylum. At the port, I watched the sun rise, gilding the Strait of Gibraltar, and felt Amina squeeze my hand. "This is not an end, sister," she said softly. "It's a beginning. God has plans for you that you can't yet imagine." The ferry was packed with tourists and traders, but I sat on the deck, the salty wind blowing against my scarred face, as the shores of Morocco receded with each passing minute. It was the first time I had left my homeland, and a mixture of fear and hope enveloped me. 2 hours later, Spain appeared on the horizon. Algeciras rose like a promise of a new beginning, its white buildings gleaming under the Mediterranean sun. My heart filled with a whirlwind of emotions as the ferry approached the port. At immigration, I presented my temporary documents and explained my situation in the Spanish I'd learned from tourists in Marrakech. To my surprise, the agents were understanding. An older woman with kind eyes spoke to me in basic Arabic. "You'll be safe here." His words brought tears of relief and gratitude, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like a hopeful future was truly possible. There are organizations that can help, and I knew it. Within a week, I was living in a refugee center in Madrid, sharing a room with 2 other women who had also fled dangerous situations. One was from Syria, escaping war, the other from Guinea, leaving behind domestic violence. Our stories were different, but we shared the same pain of having left everything to save our lives. The following months were a whirlwind of legal interviews, medical exams, and Spanish lessons. My case was relatively clear to the authorities. I had physical evidence of the attack, reports from human rights organizations, and detailed medical documentation. Even so, the legal process dragged on for almost a full year. During this time, I discovered a small Christian church in Madrid with a ministry dedicated to refugees. The leader, a man named Carlos, didn't speak fluent Arabic, but he had learned a few basic words to communicate with me and other Muslim refugees who were discovering Jesus. The congregation welcomed me like a daughter, especially the older women, who reminded me of the grandmothers I had left behind. Finally, after 13 months of waiting, I received the news that would officially change my life. My asylum application had been approved. I could legally remain in Spain, work, study, and build a new life. I cried with joy and gratitude, remembering the words Jesus had whispered in my hospital dream. Every promise of his was being fulfilled before my eyes. Life in Spain began with small but steady steps. I studied Spanish with dedication, knowing that the language would be my gateway to a new reality. My scars attracted attention, but I soon realized they were also gateways to conversations about faith, hope, and redemption. After obtaining my legal status, I decided to study social work. I found my calling, helping people who had lost everything but still retained hope. My own scars made me more effective, because each client knew I understood the pain and courage it took to start over. The church became my family. When I first shared my testimony, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. "Your story needs to be heard by more people," said a brother in Christ. There are many women who seek without knowing what they're looking for. Thus, my ministry was born. I began speaking at churches and conferences, sharing how Jesus transformed my pain into purpose. After each event, someone would come up to talk. Muslim women who read about Jesus in secret, lost refugees, people who needed to hear they weren't alone. I wrote a book called My Scar is My Crown, which was translated into several languages. Letters began arriving from all corners of the world: women in Pakistan, converts in Indonesia, refugees in Germany. One letter from a young Moroccan woman brought tears to my eyes. She wrote that my story had given her the courage to continue living and seeking the truth, even in the midst of fear. My story began to spread. and my apartment became a makeshift refuge. Women who had fled persecution found there a safe place to rest, pray, and simply exist without fear. Fatima, Nadia, Amara, each of them found spiritual hope and strength to carry on. "Your scars give me courage," Fatima said on a day I will never forget. "When I see how God used you, I know He can use my pain too." Not every day was easy. There were nights of profound loneliness, nightmares about the attack, moments of doubt. But whenever darkness threatened to envelop me, I remembered Jesus' words, "Do not be afraid. You are still mine." When I felt alone, someone would call needing help. When I doubted my worth, a letter would arrive from someone touched by my testimony. 6 months ago, I received a phone call that deeply touched my heart. My mother wanted to talk to me. She had read my book and apologized for not protecting me. We cried together for hours. "I'm proud of you," she said. "I see what you've done with your life, how you've helped so many people." My brothers also wanted to reconnect. Omar confessed to me, "Your sacrifice has changed our family. We don't see things the same way anymore." Reconciliation didn't erase the danger of the past, but it healed wounds in my heart that I didn't even know were still bleeding. Today, Madrid is truly my home. My face still bears the acid scars. It probably always will. Children watch me curiously. Adults look away. But I've learned to wear these marks not as shame, but as badges of honor. Each scar tells a story of overcoming. Each mark is evidence of a love for Jesus stronger than fear. Each imperfection reflects the perfection of God, who transforms the broken into something beautiful. A journalist asked me if I regretted following Jesus, knowing the price I would pay. Without hesitation, I replied, "The only regret I have is not having met him sooner. The scars my uncle wished were shame have become my crown. Not because I romanticized suffering, but because each mark is proof that God writes beautiful stories with ink made of tears." When I speak today, my words always end with the same certainty. My uncle said my face would show shame. He was right that my face would tell a story, but wrong about which one. My face doesn't show shame. It shows Christ. Every scar is a testament to His love. Every mark declares His redeeming power. When I look in the mirror, I see no ugliness. I see a daughter loved enough to be rescued from darkness. I see someone worthy of Christ's sacrifice. I see my scars and know they are my crown. To all the women who read my story and feel trapped by oppressive traditions, patriarchal systems, or persecution for their faith, I say what Jesus told me: "Do not be afraid. You are still mine." His love is greater than any tradition. His plan for your life is more beautiful than any limitation. If He can transform a Moroccan woman's scars into a crown of testimony, imagine what He can do with your wounds. The path will not be easy. You may pay a high price, as I did, but He will be with you every step of the way. And in the end, when you see how He uses our pain to heal others, you will realize that every tear was worth it. My scar is my crown, and one day, before the throne of our King, our scars will shine like jewels in the crowns He will bestow upon us, for we are more than conquerors in Him who loved us.